Good morning, everyone. Nice to see you all again. And today we're going to be discussing, I know the title that I gave was Celebrating Mother. We celebrated Mother's Day last Sunday. I think more of what we're going to be talking about is the concept of motherhood and the personification of the concept through Mary, the mother of Jesus, and Holy Mother. We'll start with a chant. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Filled with Brahman are the things we see, filled with Brahman are the things we see not. From Brahman floweth all that is, from Brahman floweth all, yet Brahman remains unchanged. Om, peace, peace, peace be unto us all. So often in our Western culture, when we talk about celebrating Mother, we tend to limit the concept to the individuals who gave physical birth to us. This may not be the only concept of motherhood. We have many definitions of what motherhood is. We have also examples of the Lord himself being born in a prison of Devaki and immediately being taken to Jashoda across the Jamuna River to be raised. Lord Krishna was born in prison. He was going to be killed immediately upon birth, but by the divine grace, he was taken across the river to Jashoda and traded for her daughter. Her daughter was killed and rose up as the Divine Mother, saying, "You have not killed the one who will kill you." Anyway, so who was Krishna's mother? For all purposes, it was Jashoda. She raised him, she loved him, she took care of him, and he allowed this. So with the concept of motherhood, we have the idea of nurturing, protecting, loving, encouraging. Our mother is the first person who teaches us how to love and how to react to the world. As there have been many studies on what orphans in war-torn countries, where babies have not had human contact, they have been cared for. They have been, I think Romania was the most glaring example. The babies were cared for, they were wrapped, but there were 50 of them in a room with two people, so they weren't held and nurtured. They have found that almost all of those children have problems in their adulthood in relating to other people, in knowing how to be affectionate, in knowing how to interact. In fact, I just read in one of the New Yorker, one of the magazines, the story of a young man who was raised in that situation. He was adopted by an American couple, but he was 7 when he was adopted, and he never felt like he was part of the family. He always felt distanced, and he did well in school. Everything was fine. He loved his adoptive parents, but inside he said he felt a distance. So as he reached adulthood, he actually moved into a cooperative home with other young adults who had had the same experience. So our concept of limiting the idea of mother, this is the only person, our birth mother is the only person we can get this kind of nurturing from is a very small idea of love. In ancient India and many of the other countries, with the extended families, there was never the concept of an orphan. Because if a mother died, there were 4 other women that were taking the place. And they immediately took the place and raised that child as their very own. So you wouldn't have what we consider orphans. They were incorporated. They were part of a larger group. They were part of that nurturing community. Where our limitation of the concept of mother seems to have arisen, to my mind, is with the formation of the nuclear family, the breaking away from the extended family, the going after freedom from repression, freedom from whatever, or money and success, has taken away the community of love that children can be raised in. Now, there's nothing wrong with nuclear families. They're great. They have done it for years, and it seems to be becoming a more well, it's gone through quite a phase of, yes, we are nuclear families, we are our family. But this is one of the things I think COVID has shown us. Our nuclear families, or we call it our pods, our groups that we interact with, are not just confined to 3 or 4 people that we live with in one house. We have incorporated close friends and relatives that we interact with. So we are moving towards, I think, the concept of all-encompassing motherhood, the motherhood of God. I remember once when I was on a plane in India, it was in 1978, and we were trying to get off the plane, and getting off a plane in India in those days was quite an undertaking. Everyone got up at once and everyone smashed through the aisle. And this one woman was having a little problem. She had about a 2.5-year-old and a carry-on bag, of course, or 2 or 3. And she was trying desperately to grab her bags and her child. And this very well-dressed businessman came up to her and he just hoisted the child and he said, "Come with me," and proceeded to take, as if the child were his own. And as soon as they got out of the plane, he handed the child back to its mother and everyone was fine. But how many people in the Western cultures would do that, and how many would allow it? There was no fear of the child being mistreated or stolen. It was, we were helping each other. So we have to my mind, 2 very religious examples of motherhood, the all-encompassing motherhood. We'll start with Mary of Nazareth, the mother of Jesus. Now, we have read this story every Christmas, and we have enacted it with the children in our Sunday school. The angel Gabriel came down and approached Mary and said, "Mary, you will be blessed among women." Okay, now, this is a relatively poor country girl going to her, this was not a sophisticated community. She was, if I believe, only betrothed to Joseph at that time. She had not married him. And Gabriel is telling her, "You will bear the Son of God." And she's going, "Oh dear." But she says, "Blessed am I among women." Okay. This shows she hears this calling from the angel Gabriel and surrenders all her ego to the will of God. Now, Joseph had to do the same thing because he was, he had to marry this young woman who was with child. This was unheard of in those days in that area of the country. Unheard of. So, I'm going to read a very quick little thing. She heard the calling of God. Now I'm going to read it in more modern language that Doug Hammarskjöld wrote. And he said, I don't know who or what put the question. I don't even know when it was put. I don't remember answering it, but at some moment I did answer yes to someone or something. And from that hour, I was certain that that my existence is meaningful and that my life in self-surrender has a goal. Mary answered that call, and she became the mother of Jesus. We don't have much about Mary because the society at that time was very male-oriented, very, very extremely male-oriented, and women were to be in the background. However, Pope Paul VI found a couple of examples in the Bible where Mary stands out among the poor and the humble of the Lord, a woman of strength who experienced poverty and suffering, flight and exile. In Luke, he found that while completely devoted to the will of God, Mary was far from a timid, subservient woman, or one whose piety was repellent to others. I found that kind of an interesting statement, when piety repellent to others. That's something to think about. I'm still thinking about it. On the contrary, she was a woman who did not hesitate to proclaim that God vindicates the humble and oppressed and removes the powerful people of this world from their powerful positions. Now, as a Vedantist, the way I interpret that is the less egotistic people, the people of humility, who are often oppressed, and the powerful people are the ones whose egos are rampant and becoming tyrants in the world. So, this is the similarities of Mary's life in the Bible. The thing of poverty, humility, suffering, flight, and exile are mirrored kind of in Holy Mother's life. We've just finished reading the Gospel of Holy Mother. And after Sri Ramakrishna died, Holy Mother went through a period of severe poverty, severe, what we would call suffering, though she said she never suffered once, where there was no money, her family was mistreating her, they were withholding things, and things did not improve until the disciples of Sri Ramakrishna heard about this. Now, Mary of Nazareth gave birth to an incarnation, and the other never gave birth in the physical sense, but became the mother to all who came to her and called her mother. As she said many times, I can't turn anyone away who calls me mother. They're born in very different times and very different circumstances. And so when we read their lives, we have to look at those times and circumstances and put them in context. And in that way, we can see how strong both of them were. They may seem subservient according to our modern world, but at that time they were groundbreakers. They were leading revolutions. Ramakrishna himself was an emancipator of women in the true sense of the word. Now, you could not have told me that when I first read the gospel and I heard women in gold are the problems, cause all the problems in the world. But as soon as I got over the translation and realized it was lust and greed, which applies to both men and women, not just to women, I can go along with this statement that he was an emancipator of women in the true sense of the term. He accepted in his day and time, his first guru was a woman. That was the guru who took him to the Divine Mother. And he worshiped his own wife as an incarnation of the Divine Mother. He encouraged the women devotees who came to him to become educated, to help educate other women. He felt that this was necessary for not just the good of the women in the time, but the good of the whole society. So, to get onto the principles of motherhood. Okay, your mother is the first person to hold you, nurture you, feed you. In almost all cases. This is not, over the whole thing. Because we have women who die in childbirth, so the birth mother is not the first one to do it, but there is someone who does it. And that person is the one who teaches you the first unconscious ways of affection and love. The other examples of the qualities of motherhood that I've kind of gleaned is unselfishness. A mother never thinks of herself before her child. You see examples of this in every war-torn area because they're glaring examples when it's a war-torn area. The mother is starving and doing as much as she can to get food for the children. Children are starving too, but you will see the anguish on their faces as they carry their children miles to get them some food. They're patient. Mothers will listen endlessly to your why. What do you think I've done? What do you think of this? Why does it do it? Why? They will listen endlessly to you. And they're loving. They're the ones who, when you skin your knee, pop you up on their lap and kiss it better. Does that mother have to be a woman? Or can it be the person who nurtures you? This is something that's coming up more and more in today's society. Who is it that nurtures you? As Holy Mother said, Ramakrishna himself was a mother to all who came. He lived in a Matri Bhava, the mother Bhava. He did not act. We have the prayer that we teach the children in Sunday school. The chastising father and the loving mother. The chastising father of the Christian religions and the Mohammedan and the Jewish. The father teaches you and chastises you when you do not. But the mother always loves you. So, but does that mother have to be, it could be anyone. We have, we have adoptive mothers here in this country. I know my cousin was adopted. Now, this is one of the funny things so we didn't think much about it. We thought, oh, that was very exotic. He was chosen by my aunt and uncle to be their child. 4 years later, they had their own child, and she said, but you chose him. I was just an accident. I mean, why? Why do people make their own misery? And we all went, no. There was never any favoritism. There was just two kids. So it was really funny. But when we see how Holy Mother treated everyone who came into her orbit, and we have, the reason I'm emphasizing Holy Mother is because we have much more data on it. There's very little data on or stories about Mary of Nazareth. There are a few more coming out with the Nag Hammadi Library and with the other ancient texts, but it's still very, very spotty on how she behaved. But she had to be a very strong woman. In those days, they were stoning women who were, they were stoning them. They almost stoned Mary Magdalene, who was not a prostitute. She happened to be a little politically strong, and they were threatened by her. But so we can look at the Gospel of Holy Mother. We can look at Holy Mother's life to get an idea of what an ideal mother would be. She took in everyone that when she was living in the Nahabat, which we have discussed before, the size of the Nahabat, 6x6 or 6x8, circular, and you get 4 people sleeping in there. Not much space. But if Ramakrishna sent someone over and said, take care of her, here was this young woman who was probably 18 or 19 at the time, maybe 20, but not much more than that. And she cooked for them, took care of them, acted as if she were their mother. Now, some of these women were much older than she was. One of them had lost her daughter and was grieving desperately. Another had lost a son. And she was behaving, taking the role of mother to these women, nurturing them, caring for them, listening to them, absorbing their grief. After Ramakrishna's Mahasamadhi, she said about this, just a second. The master, okay, here it is. No. The master had left her on this plane to manifest divine motherhood, to show the world what it was. So she took on as her children, and this was also groundbreaking and very revolutionary in India. The young monks took care of her. In India, this would not have been acceptable because they were not her blood relatives. They were not. But Ramakrishna had accepted them as his children, therefore they were her children. He said, I will give you a multitude of children. You will have more than you know what to do with, which he did. And they were of every race, of every creed, of every level of society. So the young monks would come, and I remember Swami Prabhupada would tell the story when he had joined the monastery, and he and one of his brother monks had decided they were going to go see Holy Mother. And so they took off walking to Jairambati. I think they took the train to the nearest train station, but then they were walking. And they got delayed, and it was very late at night. And they were hesitating whether they should go disturb her or not. But they approached Jairambati, and she was waiting for them. And she had had food put aside for them. She told the cook, she said, put some food aside. 2 of my sons are coming late. So this was how she greeted everyone. She waited for them. She fed them. She cared for them, took care of them, as their own mother would. Now, when they finished their meal, these two young boys, and they were probably late teens or early 20s, not much more than that, they started to pick up their plates, and she looked at them and she said, "Would you do that in your own home?" And they said, "No." And she said, "Well, then why are you doing it here?" To get them to accept her motherhood of them. She also greeted Nivedita, who was a Western Irish woman, ate with her, which was absolutely unheard of. Now, she didn't do it in Jairambati because she would have been ostracized, but she did do it in Calcutta, where a little more sophisticated. She also helped Sister Christine. They were all these Westerners that Swami Vivekananda brought over. And as their mother, she took care of them. She also, as we've read in the Gospel of Holy Mother, young women and young men would come from all over India, and they would be having problems with their families, or it would be a forced marriage, and they would come to her for protection. And she almost always gave them protection or helped them in their struggle. This is what I think everyone expects of their mother. Now, not all mothers are necessarily like this, which we have found there's many problems with mixed emotions about mothers in the West particularly. Although from reading the Ramayana, I would think there would be mixed emotions there too, because was it Kaikeya? Kaikeya. Yeah, Kaikeya was the one who created the hoo-ha that made Rama go into the forest for 12 years. And that was supposedly his mother, not his birth mother, but his other mother. So not all women are born or manifest the motherhood gene. Not all men manifest the chastising father gene. It's more a matter of temperament, and I think your first encounters with your own mother or grandmother, whoever it is who provided all that love and nurturing for you. If you don't get it when you're a child, you don't know how to give it. You have to learn it. But if it's given to you freely as a child, then it's natural for you to give it. It's the most natural thing in the world. We have to and that natural motherhood, you can see it with people, how they treat their own family, how they treat animals. You can see it in little children. You can see how they approach their pets, how they approach babies. I was watching some children the other day, and there was a little 7-year-old, and there was a baby in the room, and she wanted to go hold that baby in the worst possible way. She wanted to take care of it. Now, who at 7 wants to go, it's normal to her because she knows that's what you do with babies. You take care of them. We can help anyone who is in a position where they don't know that. We can offer them love. We can offer them acceptance. By example, show them how to do these things. The emotion that someone feels when they see a mother. I'm going to read another small poem that someone wrote about Mary of Nazareth. I see you in 1,000 paintings, Mary, so tenderly depicted, yet none of them begins to show you as my soul sees you. I only know that suddenly all chaos has vanished like a dream, and a heaven of ineffable sweetness has opened forever in my soul. This was written in Germany in the 1700s. And I think that's what people see when I know that's what children see when they see their mothers, when they run up to them, and it's just pure joy. Now, they all go through a teenage phase when they're exerting themselves, and let's hope they outgrow that, but it's a normal phase where they exert their own little independence. But in personifying the motherhood, the mother doesn't matter how the child treats her. She will always be loving to it. She'll always open her arms. It doesn't matter. I had some horrendous fights with my mother when I was like 16. And in my heart of hearts, I always knew it didn't matter. We'd make up and everything would be gone. It's that surety of love that motherhood personifies, that absolute surety. You have no question about it. In your heart, you absolutely know that you can always go to your mother. Now, when your mother dies, you can still go to her. You can still talk to her. You can still communicate. It's not the end of that connection. And as Holy Mother said, never fear. Whenever you're in distress, just say to yourself, I have a mother. She is always there. And I think the more we learn to rely upon that and surrender to it, the less we'll be disturbed by the things that are going on in the world today. Yeah, we're having a pandemic. Yes, we're being isolated. There's good things that are coming out of it. There's bad things that are coming out of it. We're learning more about ourselves during it because we are isolated. Most people are isolated at home, not all. But you don't have the freedom to go out as much as you did before. So we learn about ourselves during this time. We learn how we react to other people in our small group. And a small group is much more of a proving ground of emotion and behavior than a large group where everything gets dispersed. In a large crowd, we can make excuses for ourselves. We can explain away our behavior. In a large group, it's really easy to be anonymous in a large group. In a small group, in what we call a petri dish, it's much harder to ignore our part of the program. So all of these things help us look at ourselves and are we personifying the qualities of motherhood? The other thing is most mothers are extremely practical and they're fun. They know how to put some joy in your life. It's not just work, 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 work. They always think of ways that you can, they'll plan the picnic. They'll plan let's go out and do this. Now the dads may say, let's go ride on the roller coaster. They teach us the joy of life as well as the things we need to do in life in a practical manner. So that's one of the reasons we celebrate Mother's Day and Father's Day. We're trying to say we're grateful for these things and that we do appreciate it and that we do recognize it. It's also amazing if you accept the concept of the incarnation of God appearing in human form. You think about the fact that God chooses to be born as everyone else is, becomes very small and seemingly helpless, and waits for his parents or her parents to care for them, to nurture them, to take care of them and raise them. Now, is this necessary if it is God? No, but it's all done to help us. It's all done to show us the way to go back to our divinity. It shows us the ideal ways to behave. Of course, if you get into the life of Krishna, you kind of won't go, Krishna was a naughty baby, and he was naughty all the time. He liked to tease and to get into trouble, and he liked to steal butter and steal milk, and he'd go around all of Vrindavan and stealing the milk and butter from the cowherd girls. And the mothers would come and they would complain to Jashoda. They would complain, but then they would see him and they'd say, oh, that's all right. And she would try and discipline him. Now, how do you discipline a naughty child? Well, she tried to tie him up so that he couldn't run out and go steal things. And she couldn't tie him up. She couldn't tie him up. Nothing worked. And finally he allowed himself, because he saw how frustrated she was becoming, and he allowed himself to be tied up, but he could pull down whole trees if he wanted to. But her love for him won him over to allow her to take care of him. And this is what I think everyone who you see in your children. You see that. You see that they have these little free spirits that are going around, and you love them so much they allow you to direct their lives for a while. Not forever, but for a while. And when they're very small, we see how the parent is teaching the child every day of their lives by example, and how to work and how to live in the world. And the child is just absorbing all of this because there's such a bond of love between the two. Love and patience. And there was a saint in early Christianity who said, "This day Mary has become for us the heaven that births God. In her has God grown small to make us great." Now these, why else would God come on earth but to show us how to get back? And how does he choose a mother? Because that is the person that exemplifies the ideal mother. Now, in Holy Mother, we have an even greater manifestation because she did not birth anyone. Even in the animal world, there is a connection for a certain amount of time to your offspring. But then you just let them go. Now, in our society and in human beings, we don't just send them off and let them go. The bond remains for life. They're always there. They're always your child. You're always their mother. Sometimes that's not what people want to see when they start moving back at 30 into the house, but it's okay. They are your children. And this bond is one of the strongest in all of humankind. So I will close again with Holy Mother's thing that said, whenever you're in distress, all you have to say is, I have a mother. And if there's any discussion or questions, it was kind of a ramble. I will accept any questions. Okay, then we'll end with the oh. No, we won't end with the chant. We'll do this first. Next week, Pravrajika will give a lecture on presence from Buddha. Wednesday at 4:30, we'll have the Eternal Companion live on Zoom and YouTube. Saturday, we'll have the Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna live on Zoom and YouTube. Sunday, the 6th of June, the temple will open, and I believe Swami Mahayogananda will be giving the first lecture. The protocols will remain in place. We're not quite as free as some of the world. Somehow we can't go from 0 to 120 in 2 seconds. So it will require masks. We're not going to card people for their vaccination cards. We'd much rather you keep your masks on and sanitize your hands when you come to the temple. And as that starts, we will have the temple open for Arati every evening from 6 to 6:45. It will also be open for the classes, the Eternal Companion and the Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna, both of which will be at 5 o'clock when the temple opens. That's a lot, but Durga will send you out an email on it. Okay, so we'll end with the chant. Om Shanti 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 Hari Om Tat Sat Sri Ramakrishna Arpanamastu.